planned it. I did, thank you. I already had one.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call. There we go. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Monday, March 3rd school committee meeting to order here at the Cahill Auditorium. I just want to give a brief overview of how this evening's going to go. So the superintendent is going to give a brief overview of all of the options that came forward from Sanborn. Then I am going to ask for a motion for a public hearing on potential redistricting and school consolidation. Then I'm going to ask the school committee if they have anything that they would like to ask or share, and then I will open it up to the public. I have a sign-up sheet here. A number of people have already signed up. There's one still in the hallway, so while the presentation is going on, if you could sign up if you haven't already done so, if you'd like to speak. And then if anybody who's sitting in the room who hasn't spoken and would like to speak, I'll give you a last opportunity to speak before we close the public hearing. And just for those people that are at home, there is no participation remotely, so if you're not in the room, you won't have an opportunity to speak at the public hearing. So I just wanted to clarify that for anybody who is on cable or BCam or YouTube. So with that, first of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. We really do appreciate it. You know, we're here to listen. We're here to hear your points of view and your opinions. So thank you all very much for being here. We do appreciate it. And thank you for all the emails and all the correspondence that were received from community members. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Lee for the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, everybody. Again, I'm going to go through a number of slides just to orientate people to where we are at this point in the process before we get into the comments from the public and the school committee. So back in January, Sanborn came out to community forums with a number of different options to be considered. The first was business as usual, meaning change nothing, just keep everything the way it was. 1B was close no schools but redistrict the entire town. 2A was close Highlands and Ross. Old South would open and the redistricting of the north section of town would occur. 2B was Highlands and Ross would close, Old South opens. Again, redistrict the north, but in this case also redistrict the south. 2C, Highlands and Ross close, Old South opens, redistrict the north and south partially. Option 3, Highlands closes, Old South opens, redistrict the north and south partially. 6A, Liberty and Ross close, Old South opens, redistrict the north. 6B, Liberty and Ross close, Old South opens, redistrict the north and the south. As you might be able to see on the slide, there's a red box that indicated some new options which had been requested from the school committee. So although no decisions have been made, 3 options were identified as the most favorable by the school committee and will be discussed in greater detail this evening. Option 1B, no school closure, redistrict the whole town. Option 2C, Highlands and Ross close, Old South opens, redistrict the north and the south partially. And option 3, Highlands closes, Old South opens, redistrict north and south partially. Option 1B was no school closures, redistrict the whole town. And you may be able to see on the screen, obviously these slides are available online as well. But in this scenario, what you see is students from Flaherty and Morrison being added into the Ross School, increasing the population there. And students from Liberty going to Highlands and some Highlands students going to Liberty. There's also a small component of Flaherty that would go to Ross as well. That's Flaherty 5. What this would do, were it to be the option, the capacities of the individual schools would be as follows. The Flaherty Elementary would be at 81% capacity, Highlands would be at 93% capacity, Hollis would be at 63 capacity, Liberty at 94, Morrison at 70%, and Ross at 84. So this is just a rebalancing of students just using the schools that we presently have. We had a rubric that we had been using all along. There was a scenario survey that went out to the community asking for what our priorities should be in this work. The priorities are listed on the left-hand side: financial sustainability, facilities report consideration, which is a report that was generated from the facilities department about the condition of individual schools. Minimize student change, use the Old South building, separate special spaces, meaning rooms for art, music, phys ed, things of that nature, and no elementary or middle school split. And what that means was no elementary school would then send its students to either, in this case, both East and South, the splitting of that school. So for the first scenario, financial sustainability was considered low. The use of the facilities report was considered low. Minimized student change was medium. Not a lot of students were moving this one. The use of Old South was low because it was not going to be used. Separate spaces would be high, and no elementary middle school split would be high. The projected savings on this option are 0. This is a redistribution of students. In doing so, there is no efficiencies that we would realize in terms of class sizes that would allow us to reduce sections. Option 2C, Highlands and Ross closed, redistrict the south and the north. Again, to the extent that you can see the slides, this, in essence, on the south side of town, it brings Liberty students into the Highlands area. It brings Highlands students into the, no, this one has Liberty students going into Highlands, but Highlands students, in essence, remaining is one unit. This is on the north side of town. You get Ross students going into Flaherty, Ross students going into Morrison, and some Liberty students, again, going into Highlands. The impact of this, at the Flaherty Elementary School, 94% capacity would be realized. At Hollis, it would be 86% capacity. At Liberty, 78% capacity. Morrison, 82% capacity. And the South Elementary School, which in this scenario is now open, would be at 80% capacity. Using the exact same rubric, financial sustainability, this does save money, so it's considered high. The facility report is considered in this scenario. It is low on minimizing student change because it does affect a lot of students. It is high on using South, maintaining separate special spaces, and again, it does not split the elementary and the middle school. So in this scenario, part of Liberty and Highlands in its entirety would move into Old South. It would reduce some of the overcrowding at Liberty and create a contiguous district for bus route efficiency. The projected savings in this scenario are between $520,000 and $595,000. Option 3, close Highlands and use Old South, redistrict the whole town. Again, you can see the changes here. You have Flaherty students going into Ross, Morrison students going into Ross. On the south side of town, you have Liberty students going into Highlands. No changes to Hollis. Again, the capacities afterwards would be at 79% at Flaherty, 63% at Hollis, 77% at Liberty. Morrison would be at 70% capacity. Ross at 81. The new South Elementary School would be at 80% capacity. Same rubric, medium financial sustainability, is not much savings here. Facilities report consideration, again, medium. It does not optimize what was in the report. Medium for minimizing student change. It does use Old South, would maintain separate special spaces, and again, does not split an elementary into 2 different middle schools. Part of Liberty and Highlands in its entirety would move into Old South. It would, again, ease some overcrowding at Liberty. Flaherty and Morrison would be redistricted into Ross to create more efficient class sizes. Excess capacity on the north side of town. Schools on the south side would have additional space. However, again, the projected savings is 0. Some further context as we continue this conversation. Projected expenses and funding as we look towards FY26. We have begun the budget process, although we are at the beginning stages of that. The school department level services maintenance of effort budget is projected right now at $83.1 million. The projected funding from the town at this point is $82.3 million, leaving us in this moment with a deficit of approximately $800,000. Some cost savings analysis. Looking through the class size, options 1, B, and 3 do not allow for fewer number of total sections, so the savings is projected at 0. And option 2C is projected to yield, as I mentioned, between $520,000 and $595,000 in savings. Those savings would come from the following: the reduction in an administrative team, meaning a principal and administrative assistant, a school nurse, support staff, which would include crossing guards, supervisory paras, and paraprofessionals. 2 to 3 classroom sections would not be needed. Facility savings from the school closure of approximately $100,000, with an additional transportation cost because some of these students had not been previously bused of approximately $30,000, and that's where you get or derive the $520,000 to $595,000 potential savings. Again, option 1B, 0 savings. Option 2C, $520,000 to $595,000. Option 3, 0. School enrollment, K-4, has been declined by about 400 students in the last 10 years. Fifth grade has also moved into the middle schools. You can see those numbers here from 2016 to 2026. The last year is relatively stable in terms of enrollment. It's come up in conversations, but on Friday there was a meeting with the MSBA. We would be asked to pay back the following amounts if a school closed and did not operate. If Old South were not to reopen, approximately $450,000 would be owed to the MSBA. If Highlands were to close, approximately $570,000 would be owed on the recent roof project that was done there. Exact amounts and payback specifics are to be determined in consultation with the MSBA, and so unknown at this point. We are assured that any action under consideration would not affect our ability to partner with the MSBA on future projects, including the high school. MSBA demonstrated an understanding of the changing circumstances and a commitment to the Braintree community. They also strongly recommended engaging with an outside consultant on a town and school master plan. And that is what I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, Mr. Lee. At this point, I am going to ask for a motion to open the public hearing. Again, I have a sign-up sheet here. Once we open up the public hearing, again, I'm going to ask the school committee if they have any questions or comments that they would like to add. Then I'm going to open up to the public hearing. I ask that everybody keeps their statements or their statements to 3 minutes. We are going to time, just in the interest of time. If we go longer than 90 minutes, which I imagine we will take a break for 5 minutes. So just let people know that that's the format we're going to go with this for the rest of the evening. So with that, do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
I have a motion by Dr. Horak.
Second.
Second by Ms. Tuffy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous. So the public hearing is now open. With that, is there anybody on this committee that has a question or a comment regarding redistricting? Mr. Rullo.
So I know it's early in the process, and like the budget is very much in the very early stages, but we are projecting an $800,000 deficit, and I'm just curious if you can give any kind of illustration as to like what that looks like in terms of like what our school system looks like if we do have to get to a point where we're cutting $800,000.
To your point, Mr. Rullo, we are early in this process. However, we do have a little bit of experience in budget reductions, given the work that had been done last year. Reviewing some of that work and taking into consideration newer factors. With $800,000, we'll be looking at approximately 11 to 12 positions, most probably taken out of the high school or the middle school level, although there could be some smaller impact at the elementary level. The specific positions, I'm not at this point prepared to speak to.
Okay.
Mary Joyce.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to listening to public comment because I think, we are looking for the direction, especially the community and this committee wants to go. I will just note, just for reference, while the override was successful, that was not something that was going to solve our operational gap of 18 million last year. And what we had proposed in the mayor's budget for the next 5 years our town revenue is growing between 2 to 3%, and we were allowing the schools to grow at 3.5%. We knew that the schools growing at 3.5% was going to continue to be challenging, and that's like what we felt like was affordable. So like we can't afford where the schools want to go, and I know last year we started to touch on this about how we might find savings, if any, and how we were going to tackle this challenge head on. But ultimately, we are going to be in this sort of very limited resource environment, and I think we're trying to identify things that might not be, you know, a perfect scenario, but might be livable to keep us holding on to as much of the services, programs, on not just the school side, the DPW side, the fire side, the police side, like all these departments. If we cut from one to give to another, we're going to have really, we're going to have impact to that. So we're really looking at trying to find and identify a long-term affordable solution, and the consolidation is one avenue that's being explored. We'd love to have a lot of time on our side to vet this fully, and I think we're seeing up against a budget and limited resources where, you know, we may not have that time, and we may be making a choice in a time frame that isn't, I think, as much time as we can buy, we want to, but I think we need to loop in sort of the trade-offs of what we're trying to save and what we're willing to compromise to get there. But I think setting the stage for the town side, like I would love to have more resources to put towards the schools, but our free cash is very low. Our stabilization funds are almost nothing. And long-term, like we have to build back. So this conversation can help us figure out ways that the community might be willing to help us move out of sort of this deep hole we're still digging out of. This is not fun decisions that we're all making, and I do appreciate how stressful this is for families. I have kids in the schools and lots of friends with kids in the schools, and you know the last thing we want to be doing is pitting neighborhoods against each other, or you know making a decision to keep one thing open and then cutting programs on the other side. We want to figure this out together, but you know, I don't see a perfect solution moving forward. So I'm really looking forward to hearing everyone's feedback tonight. Thank you.
Any other comments from the committee? Dr. Horak?
We have a clear math problem, and nobody else is going to come in here and magically solve it for us. We've seen that there is no huge influx coming for us. In my opinion, this body's primary objective is to ensure long-term stability, fiscal stability, so that all of our students, all 5,200 students in our school system, can continue to get an excellent education. This year, I voted against the program of studies for middle school. I was one of 2 votes that voted against it, and my reasoning was I was not happy that there were middle school students in study hall, meaning that there are middle school students sitting around without instruction on almost a daily basis because we took away some of their programs due to the financial crisis last year. I'm not okay with that. My primary guiding principle is long-term fiscal stability, working with the mayor's office, and continuing the programs so that our students can continue to learn and have an outstanding academic achievement. The reason we started this entire process was economic, right? We had 2 different consultants working with us this year who clearly wrote very great reports about what some of our problems was. One was the ERS report that we saw results from in August or September, and then the other one was the Sanborn, and they're telling us some solutions. And I want to be sure that we're listening to those solutions so that we can continue to provide an excellent education for all of our students. And really, we don't want to cut any more programs at this point, in my opinion. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Fogarty?
Thank you. So I have a few different comments, somewhat scattered, that I wanted to share. One, I wanted to point out that while, according to Mr. Lee tonight, the options 3 and 1B would not save any money. So that's because we cut the budget last year, right? So like, if the budget had not been cut last year, then redistricting would have resulted in saving money. So we already made those cuts. So redistricting, I think, would help to balance out class sizes and use the resources that we have more efficiently. At least that was the idea. A couple other things. I do have concerns about closing schools based on the deficit that we're talking about. I don't, I could be mistaken, but I don't totally feel convinced that I know for sure that there is a deficit. Like, for example, in the money that the school department is saying they need for next year, there's an 18.36% increase for programs with other districts. That is based on the potential move-in of special ed students requiring placement. To me, I'm not really convinced that there's this fiscal emergency when we're talking about a potential move-in. I'd like to know about, Mr. Moran mentioned at town council that you could use a special ed stabilization fund to address some of those potential issues. I'd like to hear about if that's an option, rather than just go straight to closing schools. I mean, I also want to talk about, so I guess my concern is that we have a projected budget need, which is not very concrete, and we have a number from the town that's based on projections from 2024, which may not be concrete. So is there a fiscal emergency? I don't personally feel convinced. To me, closing schools that have been in operation for generations, serving the community, as far as I'm concerned, the proponent of closing the school has the burden of proof. I would not be willing to vote to close schools unless I'm convinced that it's necessary in the best interest of the students. I also believe that since, the options are really narrowed down, so I'll just go right into some of my thoughts about option 2C. Puts Flaherty at 94% and Hollis at 84 or 86%. I believe that is coming close to overcapacity. There are issues with Hollis. I took a tour of Hollis last week with Mr. McGordy. Hollis is, in the opinion of the facilities department, the worst school building in the town. It has asbestos in the walls, in the floors, in the ceilings. You cannot put nails or drill holes in some of the walls because there's asbestos. It's too dangerous. I believe I saw schools in a hallway, or a classroom in a hallway, a classroom behind a stage. Now this plan is redistricting over 100 kids into Hollis. So you're taking students from a better facility and moving them into a worse facility. To me, it seems unprecedented to tell parents that you're going to redistrict their students from Flaherty and Ross into a facility that is deteriorating. If you were to repair Hollis, then it would take 2 to 3 years, and you'd have to shut down parts of the school for significant parts of the school year. So again, it's not exactly a stable situation. It can be catastrophic failures. A year and a half ago, the pipe under the floor in the kitchen in Hollis burst. Steam was coming into the kitchen, and they could not go under the floor because of all the asbestos, so they had to have the pipe go over the ceiling. Again, they're lucky that we have someone with great ingenuity who can figure out a solution in our facilities department, but what happens if that cannot be done next time? This is a very old building, and to me it just seems kind of unprecedented to be redistricting kids into an old building. That there should be a long-term plan to address that building and rebuild it, or build some kind of better building rather than just putting kids into a building that is not in good shape. I also question the renovations that we've talked about doing at Hollis, the 12 million. I mean, that's just to bring it up to basic standards. It's not a renovation. It's just basic repairs, get it basic functioning level. It's not. I personally do not believe it's possible to renovate the building. It's too old. It would be too expensive. If there's other information, I'd certainly consider it. But we're down to the wire, so I'm kind of giving my opinion. I also would, if we talk about closing schools to save programming, I'd want to know what the programming is specifically, what happens in the program, and what is the true utility of the program, rather than just using the term programming. I worked as a teacher for many years. I believe not all programming is equal. So I'd like to know what the programming is that we're talking about losing before dismantling part of the school system to save it. Those are my thoughts. I don't like, I've never been a fan of closing schools because of the impact on the community, and I want to, if it's truly necessary, it's truly necessary, but I don't really like option 2C. I think that it is concerns about whether it's really necessary from a financial standpoint. I don't like the use of Hollis and the reliance on Hollis. I don't like the potential overcrowding. I'm open to option 3 because of the condition, really not about saving money so much, but about the condition of the building. I'm willing to hear other perspectives on that as well. So that's my perspective at this point.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else want to speak? Mr. Lynch.
Thanks for coming tonight, everybody. I look forward to what you guys have to say. I'll be quick, but just kind of had a little different perspective on this budget situation and moving forward. So I was doing a little research. In 2005, actually the year I graduated, the budget was $36 million total, and I think it was 5,500 students or 5,900 students, and today it's $82 million. It's the same amount of students. Put inflation in there, I think it came out to like 58 million for the same amount of students. And to me, that's kind of where I'm at. Still kind of looking into it, but a system that created that much, to make it that much more expensive for public schools, I feel it kind of needs to be challenged in a way. Still not exactly sure how to do that, kind of just speaking from there, but I think there's some answers on there moving forward, especially for the budget and the operating costs going up. Yeah, just kind of where my head's at, so look forward to what you guys have to say.
Ms. Tuffy?
Thank you. I look forward to hearing people's perspectives tonight. I have some concerns about capacity, future capacity. We don't really know what's going to happen with the MBTA Communities Act. We have a number of projects that are being considered. I am really undecided about, I want to maintain programming, but on the other hand, I think that it's important to consider what our capacity is going to be long-term over a period of years. So tonight I'm going to be listening to you, and I appreciate your being here. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm going to open up the public hearing to the public. So I have a sign-up sheet here, so I'm just going to call the names. Are there additional? Okay, we're just going to double check and see if there are additional sign-ups in the hallway. Jean Giagrande.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, thank you. I want to thank the school committee and the mayor for their efforts in exploring all avenues of the redistricting of the schools. Mr. Batson. I would like to highlight the key points identified by the Sanborn Company, the consulting firm for assisting with the process, and keeping these priorities in mind. Making the best use of existing facilities and spaces, minimizing the impact on families, avoiding unnecessary increases in transportation costs, ensuring safety and reducing the impact on special programs, and planning for the future development and growth. Considerations for redistricting. First, I want to acknowledge the change is difficult and it's impossible to please everybody. However, when making decisions about schools, we must be thoughtful, strategic, rather than reactive. Economic and growth. Right now, we do not have a clear picture of how much development will take place in our community and how it will impact the school enrollment. Based on current trends, we do not anticipate a significant increase in school-age children over the next 5 years. Budget and safety. At this time, we do have the funds to develop a more comprehensive education plan, such as a centralized education center that consolidates all schools into one campus. While consolidation can be a cost-saving measure, in a long term, we must work within our current financial constraints and priorities for student safety. Redistricting and school safety. Redistricting is an important step towards creating a more efficient and safer school system. One of the major concerns is the condition of the school buildings. For example, Highland School, which was built in 1930, contains asbestos and has been deemed a potential safety hazard by our inspectors. The cost to repair is significant and not worthwhile investment. We cannot justify keeping students in an unsafe environment. By implementing additional option request 3, we can consolidate students more evenly across the schools without causing major disruption to families. While overall enrollment is currently low, we do not know what the long-term impact of future development. Closing Ross School, which is structurally sound and serves as a walking school for many families, would create unnecessary burdens by increasing transportation costs and disrupting families' routines. Exploring alternative uses for school buildings. To satisfy the MSBA grant of $600,000, we should explore creative solutions, such as partnering maybe with Quincy Trade Program or the Blue Hills Regional Trade Program to use the Highland School for a more sharp expansion, as there is growing interest in trade education. Other towns, like Duxbury, has successfully used their high school facilities for adult trade programs. Utilizing existing school buildings for adult education programs to maximize space and resources. Key question to consider is how long are we obligated for the $600,000 grant, number one. If a school is vacant, does it cost $150,000 annually to maintain in its vacancies? And maintaining 2 schools is going to cost $300,000 to maintain, keeping it vacant. Do we want to keep students in a school that has been deemed hazardous? After reviewing the options, I support additional option request 3, as it is the most sensible and least disruptive solution for students and families at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Jean, are you going to read Dawn Whitley's as well?
This letter is, I'm responding for Dawn Whitney, she's 80 at Wilkins Road. She wasn't able to be here tonight because of childcare. So this is from Dawn. I would like to start by thanking the school committee and members and urge to put forward a vote to pause the process if you have not been provided with the needed information to make this a momentum decision. No election official should be asked to make decisions of this magnitude in such a rushed fashion without having access to every detail needed. Closing, I would like to focus on 2 things, closing Ross and closing Highlands. After hearing the safety and the health concerns of Highland School, I think we must move the students and the staff before a tragedy occurs. Exploring students to asbestos in the floor tiles is not a risk worth taking. We must put health and safety above budgets and classroom sizes. This option puts future MSBA grant application at risk. If the Highlands addition is safe for use, we should consider moving kindergarten classes there, the integrated preschool and other programs that might be appropriate for the space. Closing Ross is short-sighted, and we need an economic impact study before voting on the closing of Ross. Beyond the closure of the schools, please consider we've lost in East Braintree, we've lost our church. Quincy Avenue is riddled with empty storefronts. Ross is the only school left in East Braintree. Ross School supports at least 3 businesses. What about property value? Studies suggest homes with 20.25 miles of an elementary school face 6 to 7% drop in property value if the school is closed. Ross is the only school in East Braintree. It's on a main road. How will this impact property tax revenue for the town? Ross could have broader implications than class sizes and administration savings. I asked each school committee member who is responsible for having this foresight. Economic impact is and needs to be part of the conversation. So far, I've not heard anyone speak of this. What will happen to staff if Ross closes? We have not been told how many teachers and staff will be let go. One second. School committee members have shared closing Ross will exacerbate the overcrowding issue. Ross School is in better physical condition than Hollis. Shifting students to Hollis puts strains on the building already struggling. Again, the option put forward are short-sighted and rushed. Braintree needs to stop being reactive and create a long-term plan. We can't keep opening and closing our schools. This method has not been working. Thank you. Don Whitney.
Callie?
Callie Blowers, age 9, 3rd grade, Ross. Dear Braintree School Committee, Ross has been a part of my family for over 30 years. My mom and uncle went to Ross. My grandmother was hospitality chairperson and actively volunteered. She still volunteers. I would hate for Ross to shut down. Some of my teachers and cousins went to Ross. We may not have a fancy playground and fancy supplies, but we have a community here at Ross. We get to walk to school. Plus, Ross is the only walking school in Braintree. And we get to play in the parking lot before school. So please, don't shut Ross down. Thank you.
Future school committee member right there. Brendan Snellman?
Tough act to follow. Hi, my name is Brendan. I have 2 daughters in the Braintree Elementary School system. I had a lot I was going to say tonight, and then we had this presentation in the beginning, which answered some questions, but again, that's kind of my point about this now. I remember several years ago, we were doing redistricting again. The committee wanted to close the Flaherty School at that time. It didn't end up going forward. That time, whatever the intention was, the town did it solely on their own. This time around, a couple years later, we have the consultants, which is fantastic. I think about 3 weeks ago, town residents got emailed choices 1, 2, and 6 and information about them, leading us to believe that 1, 2, and 6 were the options that were going to be put forth to a vote in, I don't know, 1 week, 2 weeks. And then now, a week ago, right after February vacation, we're all trying to get our lives back on track, you do a Zoom meeting, and then suddenly option 3 is thrown in there. Out of the blue, as a parent, I'm saying, I got a week until this meeting to make my voice heard. I don't know what's going on with option number 3. You know, it got posted to the Braintree Schools Redistricting website. I'm involved with just about every newsletter the town has, from the mayor's office, superintendent, PTO, my kids' schools. I never saw option 3 get emailed out to anybody. Now I come in here today, the agenda didn't even have a Sanborn presentation going over the options again. It was called to order, public hearing. That's it. I'm sure some other town members might have actually attended the meeting, did it remotely, if they knew that there's going to be the options gone over by the committee again, but that didn't happen. And now on top of that, there's option 2C that's thrown out here the day of the meeting. This is not the process that we wanted to have as town residents, as people who might have our kids go to different schools or have our job schedules, upended by this, trying to find different childcare. I think you're going to hear people talking about base. Base enrollment already came and went. I don't know what they're going to do. The town doesn't offer an option for early school or after school. It's all done through base, primarily. So again, I'm just trying to figure out where we are and what we're going to be doing here. I heard a lot of talk about on the Zoom call, like the Monster Project, worrying about our current capacity, but I think you guys saw from Sanborn, since I think 2016 you said, the school enrollment's gone down. Maybe it's going to stabilize for a couple of years, then maybe after that, it's going to go up. Excuse me?
Sorry, we're trying to keep it to 3 minutes, so.
Yeah. To my knowledge, I don't think that there's any big development projects that are going to be dumping a whole bunch of kids in the school system in the short term. So we need to utilize the resources that we have to try and stretch the funding as best as we can to make the best decision for the town. All right, just not doing it quickly the way that we've been doing it up until last week. Thank you.
Liz Kelly?
Good evening, school committee members and Mayor Joyce. My name is Liz Kelly, and I'm here tonight as a concerned parent and advocate for the Ross School. As a lifelong member of the Braintree community, I care deeply about our town and its schools. My wife and I decided to raise our daughters here in part because of its education system. However, our education system is what has been keeping me up at night, along with countless other concerned parents. How do we reach this point? And more importantly, how do we ensure we don't find ourselves back here in a few years? I know you have all heard about the uniquely special community at Ross. Simply put, it's just different. But let's put emotions aside and focus on the problem we face. Closing Ross does not solve the two main issues at hand, capacity and cost. In fact, it creates more problems. With approved housing developments bringing more families into town, eliminating Ross would only reduce your options for the future. In addition, with over $12 million in necessary repairs, Hollis faces a real risk of closure. When that happens, where will those 370 students go if Ross is no longer available? Let's not repeat the mistakes of the past. As Ms. Fisk-Hager stated in the last board meeting, we do not want to go back to teaching our elementary school students in closets. The simple fact is you need Ross. Our low-income students who consider Ross their safe haven need Ross. The students who rely on Title I need Ross. And lastly, one of the major aspects in all of this that has been barely mentioned are the 41 teachers and staff at Ross who are adored by their students. Many of them are sitting right behind me. Putting these incredible That's right, Aria. Putting these incredible educators out of work in a very unstable economy is not just wrong, it doesn't solve the problem. I urge you to make the right decision, not just for today, but for the future of Braintree's children, teachers, and families. Keep Ross open. Thank you.
Sarah Redd.
My name is Sarah Rudd. I'm a mom of two students, one at East, one at Ross. I have served as the co-president of the Ross PTO for the last 2 years. I have previously emailed you all, sharing my thoughts about not closing any schools, but specifically about not closing Ross. I wanted to take a moment to share what happened while I was handing out flyers this last week for tonight's meeting. Every person I handed a flyer to had a response. Some expressed dread, others a mixture of hope. However, there was one dad who repeatedly shouted, "No, no, no," while holding up the flyer. This father is someone I see every day, walking his daughter to school, to and from, every single day. What will happen to the families like this? While I understand that they can take a bus, it's not the same. Many of our families simply cannot drive across town to pick up their child. I've witnessed this community fight over and over again for what our schools and our children deserve. I've personally organized multiple rallies to fight for our schools, and I know at least one of you, if not more, has attended these rallies. These rallies were to fight for our schools and ask the town for a plan. Frankly, it's exhausting. Each time there is a cut, a Band-Aid is applied. I call it the Braintree Band-Aid, a quick fix with no real treatment plan, just an attempt to save what we can in the moment. When I supported and voted for the override, I believed it was the first step in the right direction. Now, I feel duped. I invited all of you to come to Ross, and I asked all of you to join us at Ross for an open conversation. Mayor Joyce, you stated that you believed it wouldn't be helpful because there are still too many unanswered questions. So I ask you, Mayor Joyce, why are you voting for such a drastic change when there is a vote coming up in 2 weeks? You also looked forward to a conversation. You also said you looked forward to a conversation on March 3rd. Is this the conversation? All of us standing up here telling you how disappointed we are in the town? I do appreciate all of you who reached out to me personally and had personal conversations with me. If any of you choose to close the doors of Ross for good and split up our incredible community, our families, our teachers, and our staff, then you should meet with us. Look us in the eye and tell us that this is what you truly believe is best for our community. Tell us what the plan is. What does our future look like? Our town needs growth. What measures are in place to prevent this from happening again? After this Band-Aid is applied, what's next? How many more Band-Aids can we take? How much more can our students take? They deserve better.
Is it Valerie? Valerie.
First, I'm Valerie Blathers. I live in the Ross School District. I have 2 children. And I want to start off by saying I know that these changes are difficult, but I think we could swallow them better if you sat here and told us you have a plan. The plan is not to, if we did this, could we take the asbestos out of Hollis? Would this help us fix the structure of our schools? And I don't think any of those questions are no. It's just to fit us into a projected budget. We're trying to save money for the budget. So I'm going to continue by saying every year it's the same fight. It's the same budget battle, the same excuses. Meanwhile, parents are paying out of pocket for full-day kindergarten, busing, school supplies, and our schools are still falling apart. So are you going to take bus fees off of us? Are we still providing pencils? Because I think it's really disgusting that we are, our parents, providing pencils every single year to our schools. Mayor Joyce, in school committee, we don't need more discussions. We don't need more delays. We need action. And to those who keep stalling development, smarten up. We can't afford to let a handful of citizens pick and choose what gets built in this town, when and how high, combing through every proposal like we're some aristocratic town that doesn't need the money. We do need it. The tax revenue should be funding our schools, fixing our infrastructure, and securing Braintree's future. Instead, we stall, we fight, and we fall further behind. Enough. Other towns invest in their schools. We beg for pencils. Other towns plan for the future. We close schools and call it a solution. It's unacceptable, and we will not stand for it. If you won't act, we will. Parents have already explored state receivership for our neglected school buildings, and we're not afraid to execute. This is bigger than budgets. This is about the survival of Braintree. And I ask you, have you contacted the state to ask for help in the distress of our schools with asbestos? When schools suffer, home values drop, families leave, businesses go elsewhere. A town that doesn't invest in itself falls apart. We need state and federal funding. We need smart development. We need bold action. Don't let scared and stagnant minds cloud the vision for Braintree's future. Mayor Joyce, school committee, rise up, push through, and the rest of us will meet you there. No more delays, no more excuses. Move now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Fiddler.
Callie is 9 years old, so I suppose I should tell you that today I am 72 years old. And I just, yeah, there we go. Got it. And I decided that this was the most important thing I could do on my birthday. I am a grandmother raising her granddaughter. She is a proud second grader at Ross Elementary School. I'm also lives with my my first grade grandson, who also lives attends Ross. We moved here 7 years ago when my granddaughter was a baby, and we moved here because we needed more space because suddenly we had all these extra people in our lives. I raised 3 children. I've done this all before. I raised them in the town of Milton. It was a lovely neighborhood. It was a lovely school. I came here, and when I first came here, we knew nobody. And everybody kept saying, yeah, but when your kids are in school, then you'll make friends. And I thought, yeah, and they'll all be my kids' age. And it turns out it doesn't matter that they're all my kids' age. They're now my best friends. In a very short period of time, I came to treasure this neighborhood. This is a group. I'm actually one of the 3 people who wasn't raised here. Everybody knows everybody, and they've known everybody forever. But these are people who take care of each other. They take care of each other's children. We pick each other's kids up from school. We do all the stuff. And I'm hoping that every other neighborhood in Braintree is like this, but I've never been in a neighborhood like this. I've lived many places, but I've never been in a place like this. Ross School, because of its location and because everybody's always known everybody, it's the fabric of this community. Everybody knows, I mean, it's like, how far from Ross are you? Well, I'm a half a mile on this side and you're a half a mile from that side, so we'll just meet at Ross. Ross School is our neighborhood. And I won't even get into the teachers and all the staff who are magnificent and wonderful. And again, I'm hoping that all the schools will tell you the same thing about their people. But I can tell you it's true about Ross. But I will keep this very brief just to say that Ross is a little jewel in Braintree, and it would be truly a crime to see it go. I know I was a federal employee for 20 years. I know budgets, I know numbers, I know agony. I'm just asking, please close Ross as a very, very last resort. We're talking about quality of life here, and the quality of this neighborhood is immeasurable, and it's a very often overlooked neighborhood with people who don't have extra resources to do things. And we count on each other, and we trust each other, and we trust that you will do the right thing. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Alyssa O'Leary. I have 2 children, one in elementary and one in middle school. If it is determined to be fiscally beneficial and for capacity and cost allocation, I know my 3rd grader will undoubtedly be impacted by any plan. In my heart, I know he will be fine. He will receive an excellent education, and will be welcomed into any school and community he goes to in Braintree. I really would not like him changing schools, especially as a 4th grader, and I hope some consideration for buffering zones and being able to complete a school one started in would be offered. But I'm confident he will succeed in any school we are districted to. communities in Braintree are amazing and welcoming. I do not want future programs being cut for our children. For instance, my older son almost didn't have math lab this year in 5th grade. It was on the chopping block if the override didn't pass. And I see how much he benefits and truly requires this class. That would have directly impacted him as well as his fellow classmates and every student in the future. This is just one example that directly impacted my family. Essential programs or opportunities for our children in the future cannot be cut, and financial stability to ensure this must be done. And I agree that we need to know what those programs would be if anything needed to be cut in the future. I appreciate hearing the outside consultants' research and compare plans, which would be possibly sustainable for our town, but however, questions and thoughts still remain. My biggest point was going to be about financials, but that was presented at the start of this meeting. Budget is obviously the driving force behind redistricting, but there needs to be a significant financial benefit for these changes to be implemented. These are our children that we're talking about, as well as communities and their future. Into Ms. Tuffy's point, will any of the redistricting that has been proposed be able to accommodate for residential building plans in the town's future? I think that needs to be considered. We need to minimize disruption and change. For some families, before school and after school programming selections have already been made, as mentioned previously, for BASE. And it makes it very difficult for families to plan, especially if they're transitioning from a walking route to a bus route to a walking route, let alone financial implications to these families. This is a constant conversation that needs to have a plan and a future. We need to keep programs for our students, as well as maintaining consistency for our students and communities. I don't envy your position, as it is extremely difficult and will undoubtedly upend many families, potentially mine and those around me and everyone in Braintree. We're all here and you are up there for a common goal, and that's to provide our children with the best education possible for now and years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Moran.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. And I'm going to hold my time. Okay. I've reviewed the meetings that you've had with the consultant, the budget presentation, and so forth. You don't have to close any school to close the gap that you've projected in your budget. Your budget was at $648,000, and tonight it's at $800,000. You can close that gap by creating a special education stabilization account, like many other communities have. Put free cash or overlay surplus into it and use it when sped costs spike. In the projected 5% or 4% increase for level services that you put forward, about $1 million of that was sped related. It was out-of-state tuitions or out-of-district tuitions, guidance costs, translator costs, and other related costs. If you put that in, if you paid for that with a stabilization fund, it frees up your operational and it removes the projected deficit. You don't need to close the school to do this, okay? Secondly, you don't save any money in closing the schools. You don't. If you close, and there's no way you should close either one of these schools. I'm glad Ross is sticking up for it, itself. My neighborhood's exhausted because last year we were right in the same damn position that we are now. You put us through the ringer and said you were going to close, and the mayor said, what is option 3 now was ill-conceived, poorly conceived. And back, there it is again. Option 3's back. It wasn't in the original consultant's report, but there it is. What you're proposing by moving all students into Old South is to put 1,400 students within 0.2 of a mile. in South Braintree. K through 8 will be on the South Campus. The Old South will be Highlands. Liberty is 2/10 of a mile away. It's a cut-through from a backyard from where South is. And South is there. 1,400 kids on one campus. And then everybody else has neighborhood schools. Where's the logic? It doesn't make sense. You're not saving money. You're disrupting people. If you want to save money, move the administration building into Old South. Rent the administration building to the communication dispatch center that we're supposed to have with Randolph and make money that way. You've given me 3 minutes. I've given this town 40 years. I got 10 more pages, but I've said what I'm going to say.
Stacy Fogarty.
Good evening. I'm also quite loud, so I'm going to do this. Hi. My name is Stacy Fogarty. I live on Elm Street, and I just want to point out all of the unanswered questions you've heard earlier and to bring context to it. If we're talking about closing Ross, that's not a long-term solution. I hear what you're saying. We do need a long-term plan, but closing Ross isn't it. It isn't even a short-term solution. It doesn't meaningfully save any money in the budget. But frankly, you can't just keep closing schools every year. So what's the real answer? What's the real plan for this? And there's no talk about what the day after consolidation looks like at these schools. What is life like at Flaherty when you shoot the population up to 94% capacity? And that's before talking about just normal population growth. What does Hollis, an aging building with asbestos problems, who tonight, when I pick up my daughter from daycare, I can hear the pipes from across the street. How is that building supposed to handle the rapid influx of so many kids? Please ask that question and find the answer before making such a drastic decision. And yes, we are going to have population growth. I understand what it said earlier, but the Mass Department of Education disagrees with the idea that we're decreasing. Our own projections earlier said that it would raise. And if you look at those numbers, within a few years, all of the schools are going to be at capacity or over. How are you going to close a school now just to reopen it later, probably at greater cost? Aren't you just punting the can down the line? How is that a long-term solution? There's been very little conversation about the social and legal ramifications of closing a school specifically like Ross, because yes, I will say it, you need to go talk to an education lawyer and ask them what disparate impact is. You need to ask them how Title VI works. You don't have to be trying to be racist to create systemic inequities. And if you're not sure, then just do a gut check. If you're not sure, just do a gut check. Think about yourself walking around Braintree, seeing the people that you know. Ask yourself, are you comfortable with those people knowing that you voted to close a Title I elementary school with the largest minority population in the town, with significant ESL and disability populations against the will of the community so you could save 0.5 percentage point less? Please make it make sense, okay? I hear lots of talk about how Ross is a small school and at low capacity, but isn't that by design? All of the other schools have had extensions and expansions. Ross has plenty of room to grow, and it's a building in great condition, but you want to throw it away. And let's be frank, there are areas that logically and geographically should be going to Ross but aren't. Haven't you created the circumstance by which you now condemn the school? A school is more than its building. And I ask you to think of it as a person with a body. I have a heart, I have a soul. Ross has a heart and a soul. It has a culture, it is a community. Don't make the unforced error of tearing it apart for the sake of nominal gain. Thank you. Oh, my last point is, I just want to point out, since we just now got it, a lot of the things that were presented here tonight, I've watched every single episode, of every single meeting. A lot of these things have varied greatly. The very last meeting we had, the savings for option 3, for example, were $200 to $300, and you would save $400,000 from closing Ross, which means that differentially, that's like a 100 to 2,000. But now we're saying we're saving $0. Previously, we've said that different population numbers have been added. You don't seem to have the answers to your own questions. They seem to keep changing. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this, or I can't quite make it out. Korstein? Ella? Thank you. Sorry about that.
Good evening. My name is Karsten Olenek, and I am also one of the Ross parents. And I'm supporting option 3. As the mayor, as a civil engineer, should know, Braintree, like many other communities in the US, suffers from urban sprawl. Due to prioritizing low-density housing, single-family homes, and single-use zoning in the past, Braintree costs for infrastructure upkeep are so high that there's too little money left for investments and improvements. I was personally shocked to see the amount of money this town needs to invest in its schools alone to bring them to a state of good repair. In my opinion, the only viable option for the problems that Braintree is facing is growth, both commercial and residential. Residential growth will bring families, and families bring children into the school system. Therefore, we need to have excess capacities in the school system, and this is what option 3 represents. Option 2C brings Flaherty and Liberty to over 90% capacity. With the plan on developing new apartments right next to Flaherty, I believe option 2C will not result in a positive outcome for the town in the future. Braintree predicts in its own master plan that the population will be between 42 and 50,000 by 2040. With that population growth, we cannot decrease the number of current schools. I find the way that this redistricting and consolidation process unfolded very frustrating. I'm especially worried about the lack of data this committee requested before it started debating the different options. Numerous times have I heard phrases like, we need to request input from this or that department on the cost of X, Y, and Z. You should know these things beforehand. You should know how much MSBA grant money this town has to pay back before debates to close any schools. And you should not request these numbers so late in the process. Actually, today was the first time that these numbers were presented. I believe this is too late. About Sanborn, they claim to have worked with hundreds of New England communities and helped several Mass towns with redistricting. I do not believe that Braintree's redistricting process is anything special. So this type of community feedback should not be new to them. I do not understand why Sanborn did not provide guidance for this council on what data they need to request and review in addition to the project data provided. What I found lacking in this whole process is an overarching vision for Braintree schools. What are the long-term strategies for the school district? Right now, we are putting short-term fixes and kicking the can down the road. Parents like me would be easier to convince on specific measures that we need to take if we know what the greater plan is. The master plan is a very nice document with a lot of lofty language, but it doesn't say anything, almost barely anything about schools. The concern that closing additional schools, that we only close the schools just for cost savings is not well thought through with the lack of a long-term plan. Thank you.
Lindsay Hulk.
My name is Lindsay Hulk. I live at 54 Arbutus Ave, and I came here to read this entire thing, but if we can do what Mr. Moran said, let's do that. It just seems pretty simple. Let's just do what he says. I am going to read what I came to say, though. My name is Lindsay Hulk again. I'm a 17-year-old. I wish I was 17. Wish it. I'm a 17-year veteran teacher at Hollis School. I'm a mother to a South middle schooler and a Highlands elementary student, and a lifelong resident of Braintree. Despite standing in front of 10-year-olds all day, teaching, lecturing, dancing around to keep them engaged, standing up here in front of all of you is absolutely petrifying to me. I'm nervous that my friends in my neighborhood and throughout the town might not agree with me. I'm worried that my colleagues across the system that I value so much may have a different opinion. However, with the fate of our schools in your hands, I needed to build up the courage and the guts to get up here and voice my opinion. Last year, our town hired a company to evaluate the school systems and to come up with an option that would most effectively alleviate the town's financial crisis and inequities present in our schools. I've witnessed these inequities firsthand as a mother and an educator in this town. My son is currently learning in an environment with 22 students, while classrooms across the town at the same grade are at 14. The students in my science class are learning with 28 peers, while colleagues in the same grade but at a different building have 16. Multiple options were presented to help this problem last week. This problem. And last week, I watched as you decided to narrow down to 3 different plans, 2 of which that you were modified. The way I see it, Braintree has 2 problems, a financial problem and inequities in the schools. Both 1B and option 3 address one problem, inequities. The money saved just by closing Highlands and moving them to Old South are minuscule. However, option 2C addresses both issues. As a teacher, it seems absolutely insane to support the closing of a school, especially your own. But if the future of our town benefits financially and schools are balanced because of this, I'm forced to look at it differently. I'm asking you tonight to move forward with option 2C. It provides the town with the most financial stability, which is why we initiated this process in the first place. 2C also alleviates the inequities in class sizes while allowing school space to grow and capacity by redistricting. In 2022, I was asked to be on Redistricting Task Force Committee that looked to alleviate some of these problems. 3 years later, we're having the same conversations, and significant monies have been spent out to with a consulting firm. We can't continue to have the same negative conversations year after year and do nothing. It's time to make a hard decision to better the future of Braintree. Like me, you might be petrified to push forward 2C because your friends and neighbors might not agree with you. However, you were voted in as a school committee member to do the right thing. You were voted in to do what's best for all students in all schools of our entire town, not just your neighborhood. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't the most popular, but I ask that you have the courage and the guts to make the decision that's best for Braintree. Thank you.
Thank you. Carly Fleming.
Mayor Joyce and school committee members, I appreciate your time this evening. My name is Carly Fleming, and I was born and raised here in Braintree along with my 2 brothers. We attended Lakeside Elementary and East Middle. Currently, I am raising my 2 sons here, and they attend East and Hollis. Many of us raising our families currently were raised here ourselves, as evidenced by Lindsay, Liz, and myself. I am also a proud Braintree teacher who has spent the entirety of my 19-year career at Ross. Like others behind me, I am here to present reasons as to why I feel strongly that doors of our little school should not be closed. At Ross, our daily motto is be safe, be kind, and follow the plan. Right, Callie? Although numbers show that we are a small school, the students inside those doors are much more than numbers. They are our future teachers, firefighters, mechanics, EMTs, and police officers, all of whom are being taught by a family of dedicated teachers and staff. The sense of community is evident as you walk the halls, seeing faculty and staff greeting and engaging students cheerily, often individually by name. When passing by a drop-off, you'll see families, teachers, and kids being kids playing in the side yard before heading into school for the busy day. At dismissal, you'll see games of basketball, tag, and soccer in the schoolyard as well, and parents that are chatting, building friendships, sharing childcare and advice, as you heard before. But most heartwarming is the full bike rack you'll see out front of Ross as the nice weather arrives. Being an all-walking school, a true community school, every Friday is Bike Friday. You'll see full of bikes and scooters. In the past 2 years, Ross has welcomed the STEP program and the Ames kindergarten classroom. These programs are sanctuaries for students who benefit from specialized instruction and additional support. If Ross students are separated, where will these extremely necessary programs be absorbed? When you focus on the word capacity, you cannot simply deposit high-need students into a different space just because there's room. The statement, kids are resilient, they'll be fine, which we've heard multiple times, is not applying to all. Will some students be fine? Absolutely. But anyone inside the four walls of a classroom would likely beg to differ. As you move forward with the forthcoming plans and decisions, I urge you to be safe, be kind, and find a better plan to follow. Thank you.
Teresa Sapansky? Shispansky. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Teresa Shispansky. I live at 16 Blanchard Boulevard, and I'm the mother of 3 children. I have a 2nd grader and a 4th grader, and my youngest will start kindergarten this fall. On a personal level, every single one of the options will be disruptive to my family, my children's friendship circles, our carpool networks. I'm sure the same thing can be said for every other family in town, whether or not their school is closed. That being said, none of these things are insurmountable to me in the name of a sustainable future for our school system. Together as a community, we voted as our #1 priority financial sustainability. I invite you to take a look at the graph. I was happy to see one produced. Of the total enrollment, kindergarten to 4th grade, in Braintree Public Schools from 2015 until now, as well as the number of empty seats in option 3 and option 2BC. I don't know if you want. Option 3, the top line there. District-wide, you will have 659 empty seats at the kindergarten through 4th grade level. You will find enough empty seats for 2 empty elementary schools, and you will not reduce the footprint of your elementary school buildings. Option 1B is not printed on that graph, but it's included in the tables and the details that I've sent you. District-wide, you will have 493 empty seats, K through 4. However, 444 of those seats will be on the north side of town, and only 49 of them will be on the south side of town. Furthermore, you won't meet the community request to use Old South. Option 2B/C. District-wide, you'll have 367 empty seats. This can accommodate new students from ZOM, East Braintree developments, as well as a subsidized full-day kindergarten. There's no evidence to support a threat of overcrowding on the north side of town in any scenario. Options 1B and 3 appear to be significantly lacking in financial sustainability. We began this process because of a real financial challenge. Less than a year ago, all of our children and families were faced with the very real possibility of losing programming in elementary, middle, and high school. Choosing to fund 659 empty seats is choosing to divert funds from all of the children who are actually enrolled in the schools. It prevents us from being able to make steps towards a new high school. It prevents us from being able to pay our educators competitively. You ask the community for money. It's your responsibility to manage it well and make decisions that are truly in the best interests of all students. Thank you for the work you've done so far. It allows you to make a difficult decision in the most fair and sustainable way possible. And that being said, if there's some magical financial plan where 659 empty seats is affordable, hey, send my kid to Ross. That's where they go. I join you. I'm happy, okay? I just want there to be the programs and the teachers that the town can afford too. So please do your work on that.
Thank you.
I bought my second grader a Braintree sweatshirt on purpose. We don't buy anything that says Flaherty anymore, because I'm like, who knows? And it's good anywhere they will go. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Schaefer or Schieffer?
My name is Michelle Schaefer. I have a first and second grader at Ross Elementary. I have a great concern for the community and the property value if the only elementary school in East Braintree is closed. A study analyzing the sudden closure of elementary schools found that said school closures can lead to a 6.8% decrease in property value of homes in the attendance zone. Schools often serve as a central community space, hosting events, meetings, and other activities that foster neighborhood cohesion. Their closure can diminish neighborhood vitality, leading to reduced housing demand and consequently lower property values. A vacant school building can become a target for vandalism and other criminal activities, further detracting from the neighborhood appeal. Take out the fact that Ross is important to us and our community, as hopefully all the schools are in Braintree and their communities. Let's look at the plan for closing Ross. It's being said that Highlands needs to close and be moved to Old South due to overcrowding and poor conditions at the school. However, you're asking me to take my kids out of a school we can easily walk to that's in fairly good condition and pay an additional $720 a year for the bus to get them to that school. That's the oldest school in the district and is in need of just as much repair, if not more, than the Highlands. How does that make sense? I resent the fact that I even have to get up here and say these things today. I feel like the topic of school closings has really made us as parents feel like we not only have to try to prove to you why our school is worthy of being kept open, but we also have to find reasons why other schools are not. This does not feel like a good place to live right now. It feels like a sad place to live. I thought when I moved here, this was a great place to raise a family, and I hope that Braintree can live up to this standard. Let's build up Braintree and not knock it down.
Is it Tori Labette?
Hi. My name is Tori Labate. I live on Beach Street, and I am a parent of a child that goes to Ross. Like most parents here, I feel a deep sense of disappointment that we are here to defend our school from closure. While we understand that the budget issues are real and need to be addressed, we don't feel like the way to address these issues is by closing Ross. We have not seen evidence that the closure of Ross will make a meaningful difference in the budget long term. The plans that have been shared do not show that this closure is part of a long-term, multi-step plan that will help make our schools better. What we have seen is that the closure of Ross and the redistribution of its students will send the surrounding schools to enrollments nearing our max capacity. A bump in the school population would send these schools beyond the desired capacity and may eventually require the reopening of Ross. The reasons behind Ross being the only school in the north for it to be closed are still a mystery to me. The presentations cite the low capacity rates at Ross, but that capacity is manufactured, fabricated by the way the town has distributed the surrounding schools. For example, kids that are within the walking distance to Ross are bused to other schools such as Flaherty. Closing Ross over other schools makes the least amount of sense, as it's in better shape, as others have said, and its population benefits immensely from having a walking school, and the traffic in the area is very manageable. If you vote to close Ross, I fear the resentment in this community will be great, as we are all wondering about the fairness and transparency of the consideration. We are wondering why Ross is the focus of this closure, and we are given some excuses. For example, Hollis, a school that is in worse condition, has similar enrollment, is not fit for closure because it's centrally located. Many of us believe that this is not the reason it's not considered, that it may be not considered for less fair reasons. I'm not suggesting that Hollis should be closed, but I am pointing out that some of these decisions seem somewhat arbitrary. I will end by trying to express how much this school means to our community. It's the place our kids are learning and making friends. It's the place many of us walk to in all kinds of weather, the place we linger together after school. It is the center of our community. We have something that's very rare these days. It's a walking school, and we ask that you protect it.
Kim Hulk.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys tonight. My name is Kim Hulk. I am the parent of a 5th grader at South and a 3rd grader at Highlands. Over the past few weeks, we've heard a lot of different numbers and scenarios with a main focus appearing to be on building capacity, with very little conversation about the population we'll be affecting most, our children. As a result, we are left with a divided town fighting for their own school rather than working together to move our schools forward. Rather than standing here tonight to plead for the school to be saved, I'm standing here to advocate for my daughter. I'm standing here to advocate to give her the educational and elementary experience I know this town is capable of. I've said this to you before, and I'll say it again tonight. My biggest concern is the lack of plan for our children and how to move forward with these proposed changes. Change management requires planning. We need transition plans, and those words have not been heard throughout all of these scenarios. What does day 2 look like, as another mom said tonight? With plans 2C and plan 3, we're putting 450 kids into one building. That's a lot of children. That's about 100 children more than they are used to on a day-to-day basis. How do we know that we have adequate staffing and resources available for those children? Will teachers from other schools be shuffled around? Or perhaps they'll be splitting their time. Will our school psychologists and sped teachers be able to support all those kids in one place at one time? Again, it leaves me concerned about the equity within our district. I still can't help but wonder, will my child continue to sit in larger class sizes as opposed to her peers and teammates across town? Beyond the numbers, we are losing a neighborhood school concept on our side of town. Right now, most Highland students can walk to school or ride their bikes with friends. With this change, so many of our students will require busing. Tonight, we've heard a lot about the Ross community, and as Mr. Moran said, the Highlands parents are exhausted. We are in a constant state of deja vu. So let me take a second to tell you a little bit about our Highlands community. If you haven't done so recently, I invite you to spend some time in our neighborhood, specifically around pickup and drop-off time. Our bike rack is full, the playground is full, the basketball court is full, the turf is full. In fact, my own son became really good friends with one of his classmates when he had the opportunity to be behind the school playing at dismissal time. And for years, they have made the schoolyard their meeting place. It truly is a special place for our community. Highlands is more than a school. It is truly the center of our community. We are a divided town with no real plan forward. We are talking about implementing these drastic changes for next school year, yet there's still no change management. There's going to be a major shift, and it's going to involve our children. We need to make sure that we have careful planning, communication, and coordination. Without that structure, we risk confusion for families, undue stress for our teachers and our children. I urge the school committee to take this into consideration as we move forward. For the sake of my child and every other elementary child being affected, I ask you to develop a structure, a well-thought-out plan that prioritizes students' educational experience, class size equity, staffing, transportation, and safety. The future of our children and their education depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather Richards.
Hello, my name is Heather Richards. I have 2 kids at Ross. And I had a lot that I wanted to say, but like listening to everyone, it kind of has changed things. Again, Mr. Moran, I'm totally on that plan. That sounds great to me. Ladies and gentlemen of the school committee and Mayor Joyce, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here as a parent of 2 kids in Ross, and I also work with, I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, and I work with many children within this community, Quincy and Milton. And one of my biggest concerns about, as the last speaker talked about, putting 400 kids in a certain school or whatever, my concerns are around the kids who need the special education piece and what that will look like. And will the kids on IEPs, will those be met? And with what's happening in a bigger scope with federal funding, what happens to them? So that's like all up in the air, and that's a question that I have of, will their needs be met? Will they be in a classroom with a lot more kids, and will they be getting what they need? And I don't mean just Ross kids, I mean any of the kids that are affected. So no one has even talked about any of the kids who need this special education. And I understand they have IEPs, but those don't always get followed, even though they are legal documents. So I'm very concerned about that. Everyone has talked about Ross, and it really is a special place, and it would be sad to see it close. But if it needs to happen, it needs to happen. But I really wish you will reconsider. A lot of this information keeps changing, and that is also concerning. The changes in the numbers and the changes in the options, it seems very rushed, it seems hasty, and this is such a large decision that I would hate. I am an information gatherer, and I always want to have as much information as I can, and it just doesn't seem like any of it is sturdy enough to like make such a big choice on. So additionally, I feel we must recognize that the move is not sustainable and a long-term solution. It seems like a short-term solution, and closing schools one at a time is a one-time fix and doesn't address the underlying financial challenges. Instead, we need to explore more strategic ways to manage the budget, preserve valuable educational resources, and ensure that our schools remain accessible and effective for all students, especially those with special needs. In closing, the decision is far more than a matter of numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about the future of our children, their education, and that well-being of our community. I urge you to think long-term and consider alternatives to closing any school. Thank you.
For the school committee, we had said we were going to take a 90-minute, we're going to take a 5-minute break at 90 minutes, excuse me. I have 6 people left to speak. Would you like to take a 5-minute break, or do you want us to continue? I was asking the school committee. Keep going.
Are opportunities to sign up closed?
Yeah, is anybody who's in the room who has not signed up that wants to speak? All right.
Oh, there's one hand in the back.
I see one hand, yeah.
2 hands.
Two
3
hands. All right.
Okay. Given that we have a few more people that want to sign up, I suggest a break. Let's get those folks on the roster and take a breather.
You want to make a motion to take a 5-minute break?
I move to take a 5-minute break.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous. We're taking a 5-minute break. I couldn't hear him. Can I have everyone's attention, please? Excuse me. Can I have everyone's attention, please? So we're going to continue with the public hearing at this point. Everybody ready? Is it Amy Wheaton? Is it Wheaton?
Hi, I'm Amy Wheaton, an exhausted Highlands parent. I have 2 kids currently at Highlands in 2nd and 4th grade. I just feel like we don't need to close the school, and I don't think there's a master plan for that in the long term. Like, I'm just worried if we close Highlands. Again, I don't want Ross to close either. I don't think we need to. And again, I feel like what I'm trying to understand is we would save $800,000 by closing Highlands, but pay $600,000 back. So now we'd be in debt more, which, again, I'm just trying to grasp at things. I don't know what the plan is if you do close Highlands. I live 6 houses away. I do know what Foster's looks like, an abandoned school. It's all broken glass. My kids and the whole neighborhood hang out there. Kids from other parts of the town get dropped off at Highlands. We paid $60,000 2 years ago to put a turf because there is no playing places unless you cross 37. That's literally where the whole neighborhood gathers together, all the kids, the parents, and there's no plan for the building. If you were to tell me, hey, we have this huge plan, we're going to close Highlands, we're going to do this huge thing with it and make $2 million a year, that would be fine. But to close the school, to just have it sit there, doesn't make any sense to me. Again, I don't have a speech out, but I don't know why redistricting wasn't looked into or explained more. I also had emailed the school committee. I was confused about the CMO working group. I asked who it was made up of. Again, I am not in favor of any schools closing, but I did notice the names was a Morrison parent, obviously a Hollis principal. I don't think all the schools were represented, looked into why. Again, Hollis costs the most to run. But I don't think, if you're in a working group, Highlands wasn't represented, Ross wasn't represented, or I just feel like we're targeted. What else? From what I hear, there's over 1,000 apartments being looked into to be built in Braintree within the next couple years. Where are any of those kids going? Because we have 6 schools now. You close it. If half of that brought in kids, you're going to reopen. We're going to be in this same predicament all the time. Also, what school's going to be trying to be closed next year? Ross might be back again, just like Highlands is. And it makes me so sad that there's like 10 families here from Highlands. We are exhausted to be in the same position again, with no plan. The one other thing is the traffic nightmare that's going to be created moving Highlands to South. That, again, Peter already said, that's 3 schools getting out within 20 minutes. So now I'm going to be waiting for my daughter to come out of South, and my son, I'm going to be waiting 20 minutes for him to come out of South Elementary School, and Liberty's there too. One thing I want to bring up, I don't think people know about wanting to close schools unless they have a child coming to a Braintree school right now and the PTO or Parent Square sends out anything. My whole neighborhood, nobody knows. Like, I feel like the town should do a better job of making people in this town aware, not just that have kids in school right now, because people have no clue unless you get the Parent Squares. So I don't know if there's got to be a better way.
Thank you. Elizabeth Maglio.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, school committee, the school administration, and all school professionals and families who have been involved in this effort so far. It's been months of meetings, sifting through data, and trying to make hard decisions that are fair. So thank you for your hard work and your dedication to get this right. I also want to thank the school committee members Lisa Fisk-Heeger, Kathy Tuffy, and Joe Fogarty, Rep. Mark Cusack, and Councilor Julia Flaherty, who attended our most recent East Braintree Community Action Coalition meeting where we focused directly on this topic. And for anyone who's wondering, we meet at the Braintree Yacht Club on the third Thursday of the month. All are welcome. So, as the district councilor for East Braintree, I must express serious concerns about the proposed closure of Ross and its impact on educational and economic equity in my district. The Ross School serves a student population that is very, very specific. First off, 57% of the students are non-white, which is the highest percentage in our district. 56% have the highest academic needs. That's the top, that's the highest level. 25% are students with disabilities, which is the second highest percentage district-wide. These figures underscore Ross's critical role in serving our most vulnerable students, and given the highest level of needs, may explain the class sizes. East Braintree holds an official environmental justice designation, with a significant percentage of households that are at or below 65% of median income, and at least 25% of households have someone over 14 primarily speaking languages other than English. We used to have in East Braintree the Lincoln School, the Perkins School, the Watson Elementary School. We used to have a library branch. We used to have a social club. The proposal to close the only elementary school in this neighborhood, our final remaining amenity, without a plan for the building, while all the other neighborhoods retain their schools, raises significant equity questions that must be addressed. East Braintree is witnessing early signs of revitalization, with businesses opening up in our community. Removing our neighborhood school could undermine this progress. Research consistently shows that when schools close in economically vulnerable areas, community stability diminishes. But now we have a veterinary clinic. We have restaurants that are opening with a variety of foods and events. We have a luxury spa and a new ball field. We need to ensure that these businesses thrive. Otherwise, we will be a neighborhood that only has gas tanks, utility infrastructure, hazardous waste transfers, and exhaust from the compressor station. The potential displacement of students from large and small rental and multifamily housing complexes presents another equity challenge. These families would face reduced participation in their children's education due to increased distance to schools. Additionally, these students would now face challenges potentially going into an unfriendly environment, and by this I mean the demonizing of renters that we've listened to for the past 3 years in fights against development. These are very difficult decisions, I get it. The council will be having budget meetings in May. I know they'll be difficult, and I think the best way to move forward is with a big vision using the data we've gathered, using the ideas that have been surfaced from the community and the teachers, and using the vision of a new mayor, of a hardworking school committee, and a committed council. These are huge assets that can help our planning, and so I ask you, please pause the vote until we can get more information and have that big vision. Thank you.
Tom Talbot.
Right there. Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Talbot. I have 3 kids, 2 at Flaherty and 1 at East Middle School. Just to let everybody know, this is like the 3rd year I've been back talking about redistricting. So we're tired as well. And I want to just talk a little bit about the options that have been put forward, but mostly just talking about where we are and how we got here. A couple years ago, there were several options that were going to impact my family, some of my kids. We came forward to the school committee. We didn't have any data. We didn't have options. We didn't have criteria well defined. And we asked for those things over and over again. Can we get, what is the criteria that we're looking to meet? What are the goals we're trying to achieve? We heard a lot about fiscal responsibility, a lot about budget shortfalls. And we said, if that's the case, then let's identify the criteria, let's look at the options, and let's come up with a plan for how we're going to address them. I was happy to see in this process where we brought in consultants, we started to pull together data, we were starting to get some of that data, we had a list of options, we had defined criteria that we were looking at. All of that's great, and I know some people are frustrated that not all the data is there. I've been frustrated by not seeing a lot of the budget information, which I know we got some of that tonight. My biggest frustration is a couple weeks ago, we now have a third option that's come in. And this new option, as I've looked at it, doesn't really address anything. It keeps basically everything. It impacts a bunch of families and has zero budget dollar impact. These are the kinds of things I've been frustrated by for 3 years looking at these things. None of the proposals that my family has faced has ever had a budget impact, but all we hear is the reason we're doing these things is for budget reasons. So one of the things I'm asking for the school committee to do is if we're going to have decisions and the drivers are fiscal responsibility, having an impact on the budget, let's make decisions that have impacts on those things. Let's not impact our families. Let's not impact our kids and our students and our teachers if we're not actually doing anything and actually having a budget impact. Thank you very much.
Michaela.
Hello, my name is Michaela Kennedy from Ross Elementary, grade 4. Ross is a place where I feel safe. The teachers are nice. We have kind, lovely crossing guards. I made a lot of friends like Mackenzie R., Cooper L., Matthew R., and V. Me and many families have memories I hate to see hearing families like this. Some families can't afford a bus or can't have time to bring their kids to school. Will I still get my IEP services? Makes me upset to see the town hurt. So do not close our school. Thank you.
Excellent job, Michaela. Next name is Robert, is it Boudreau? Boudreau. Thank you.
How's everybody doing tonight? I had a couple points I wanted to touch on. Some people may be behind me may be surprised to hear some of the numbers. Obviously, I'm sure most of you are aware of these numbers. I was kind of surprised to find out that the town of Braintree actually allocates almost 53% of its budget to the education system, which I'm fine with. I believe in education. There's absolutely an important need for that. Comparatively to other towns, right, so the city of Quincy or the town of Weymouth, respectively, the town of Quincy allocates 28.3% of its budget, and the town of Weymouth, I believe, is around 43%. So taking those numbers into consideration, I don't necessarily think it's a funding issue with the schools as much as it's a budgeting issue. Taking into consideration, I know there's a lot of services that maybe don't receive the full attention that the parents want. I do think there's a way that we can effectively look at what our spending is and figure out where that issue is with taking into consideration inflation and other matters. We arrive at a number, I apologize, the number was mentioned earlier, but well short of what we're spending right now in terms of the 83 or 84 million. One of the other things I wanted to reference was between all the projects going in town specifically, the tax incentives or budget breaks or cuts that are given to these contractors and these people that are occupying these buildings in Braintree, the property values are high for a reason, and that's because we were able to hold a certain value to the properties and assessment of based on schools, town services, so on and so forth. So why are we giving breaks to these contractors to incentivize them when they're already incentivized? They're making hundreds of thousands of dollars on these projects. They don't need the town of Braintree to bend a knee to give them a bigger accommodation for what they're trying to accomplish. I think taking all that into consideration, along with what other people have mentioned between the Zone project and the project going over at St. Thomas More, there's going to be more kids added to the school system. To close a school right now would not make any type of sense to support the future of where we intend to go. The town of Braintree stood behind its schools, and that was always the biggest selling point on the town of Braintree. I moved from Weymouth. I don't tell a lot of people that because I get funny looks. My point being is the first statement that I made, I moved to town of Braintree when I was 21. The first statement everybody always made was, you made the biggest, greatest decision ever because you're going into a town that stands behind its school system. I would like to continue to stand behind the school system, but I would like to do it in an effective manner that allocates the funds appropriately. I'm not here to say that any one department or any one classification should lose funding or should get funding, but that's respectfully where you guys all come in. So we trust you to make these decisions based on our taxpayer money, which many of you also pay taxes to the town, but it needs to be spent wisely. If we're foolishly spending money, which I'm not going to point to one thing and say we are, then we need to be accountable to that, as we as taxpayers are, because we make our payments quarterly. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John Kess.
Good evening. My name's John Cass. I'm a parent of 2 kids in the school system, South and also Highlands. Thank you all for your volunteer work here on the school committee. My view is that this process has been biased and run very, very badly from the last year. From incorrect numbers on student numbers on October 1st, 2024, we actually had higher numbers the month before, and then higher numbers on student numbers for the district a month later. Plus, as many people have said tonight, we're going to get more building over the next couple of years. We're going to get higher numbers in terms of students coming in. And as the superintendent said, student numbers have stabilized. We're also reporting on the April 2024 budget numbers, instead of getting an update from what happened in 2024 and also the projections in 2025. Finances have improved. I don't know why the mayor hasn't actually touted the fact that we've done very, very well in 2024. You'll notice in any of the presentations that when they actually decided to start talking about numbers, and I remember back in 2024, we actually didn't start this conversation off about numbers. We only started it, including those numbers in 2025. And the finances have actually improved. They were really good in 2025. We should be touting that. We should be celebrating it, but we're not. We're not even mentioning those successes until probably after this vote gets done. Town council members have questioned the numbers as well, asking why they need to close a school when the numbers aren't that bad. I wasn't here for Mr. Moran, but I think he did a good job with that, from my understanding. The district's hiring of the Sanborn companies put the district in jeopardy. A parent or a number of parents at one of the soon-to-be closed schools can put in a complaint at the Department of Education or the MSBA for not following the correct procedure in the hiring of the company. The superintendent, it's not his role to manage the process of the closure of schools and buildings. And it should have been under the remit of the school committee, and it should have been put to a supplemental budget. I know that we all criticized supplemental budgets last year, but it should have been put to supplemental budget. If school board members vote anything other than no on any vote for closing a school, I think a recall for school committee members in order. I mean, I really do. This whole process has been absolutely extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. I'm so frustrated. Thank you.
Jack Livzo.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Liuzzo. I currently have a second grade student at Ross with an incoming kindergartner next year at Ross, hopefully. I'm here tonight not just as a concerned parent, but also a voice for our children, our families, and our community. The decision to close Ross Elementary is not just a logistical shift. It is a decision that will have lasting negative effects on our children's safety, education, and livelihoods. Our school is more than just a building. It is the heart of our neighborhood. It is our place where our children feel safe, supported, and inspired to learn. It is close to home, close to us as parents, and importantly, close to emergency services like the police station and the fire station directly across the street. These are safeguards we rely on, and moving our children across town strips them of these protections. One of the most troubling aspects of this closure is the plan to bus our children to schools across town. This presents significant safety concerns. Bus rides increase the risk of accidents. Instead of walking safely to the school that we know and trust, our children will be placed on buses for extended periods, adding unnecessary stress to their daily routines. Furthermore, our school is one of the newer ones in the district and has a brand new roof of 7 years. Well-maintained facilities and, most importantly, incredible teachers, faculty, and staff who have dedicated themselves to our children's success. Why dismantle something that is working? Why take away a school that is already providing an excellent education and force our kids into unfamiliar environments with no guarantee of the same quality of instruct and care? The impact of this closure doesn't stop with our children. It reaches the families as well. Many of us have built our lives around the proximity of this school. We have jobs that allow us to drop off and pick up our kids on time. We have childcare arrangements that depend on the school's location. Forcing us to send our children across town disrupts these routines and places the additional financial burden on us as parents, who may need to adjust work schedules, find childcare, pay for busing, or even worse, move close to stay to our children's education. This decision does not benefit our children, our families, or our community. It instead creates unnecessary hardships while eliminating a school that has served us well. I urge the decision makers to reconsider, listen to the voices of the families that this affects. Look at the facts. Our school is safe, strong, and successful. Closing it is not a step forward, it is a major step backwards. Let's stand together to fight for our children's future. Let's demand that our school remain open, and not just for us, but for generations to come. Thank you.
Heather Liss.
Good evening, Mayor Joyce, Chair Fisk Heger, apologies if I'm saying that incorrectly, and members of the committee. My name is Heather Liss. I am a near lifelong member of the community of Braintree. I grew up here. I went to Ross and then East and then the high school, moved away and then came back to raise my children here. One of my children has gone to Ross and is now at East, and my second child is partway through Ross. So I come before you tonight with a good knowledge about this community, as well as a deep care and love for Braintree. I'll try to speak to you factually and not too emotionally, because obviously this is close to my heart. So first, I wanted to just thank all of you. You're faced with a really difficult decision here, and you know, there's so much to consider, and I appreciate your work as members of the committee. Some of your staff, for the town. It's a lot of work, and I really do appreciate that. I also thank the consultant that you hired for their hard work. I think that was really valuable information. I think it's one piece of the puzzle. I think there's other information to consider too, but I appreciate that that step was taken. Second, I'd just like to mention a few cost considerations from a town-wide perspective to make sure that you are considering these things. I don't have numbers, but just things that I have thought of. When you look at the savings, are you considering the savings not just next year, but in the years to come? A lot of folks have mentioned having a plan, and I think that is incredibly important to consider the implications over time of any decision and making sure it's not just a short-term decision. Second, there are costs associated with staff and teachers leaving. There may be severance packages. There may be relocation expenses for teachers that are moving to another school. There may be additional training for people that are moving to another school or perhaps a slightly different role that they need to now fit into. What about the costs for students in relocating some of the services that they may now need? There may be some mental support that students may have. There may need to be some shuffling as students who have special services now have to fit into a different school, different professionals. There's small costs that add up when you talk about a lot of students. Busing expenses are another consideration. I saw that this might add just up to 2 bus routes. I would want to make sure those numbers are right and look carefully at what those costs are, because that can be significant. When we think about closing a school, a vacant building also has an expense. There's still costs to maintain it. If you sell a school, there are costs to selling that. There's appraisals, there's due diligence that has to be done. School grounds are part of our open space system, and they have value, not just as open space as they are now, but when it's not school hours, they are open to the public. And those are essentially playgrounds, though Ross does not have an official, play equipment playground. That is incredibly important. There are values to the adjacent properties, and those are well documented in studies. There is, excuse me, what? Was it 30?
3 minutes, yeah.
30 seconds. Oh, okay, 30 seconds, you said. There are adjacent conservation land, particularly with Morrison and Ross, that is valuable and has an educational value to the students. And finally, I just wanted to say a couple of items about Ross itself. As others have said, this is a special school. The FAQs from Sanborn mentioned that there were no walking schools, but that's not accurate. Ross is almost exclusively a walking school, with the exception of a small amount of special ed students. And there are families that might not be able to afford to easily get their students to school. What if they are late and they don't have a car and they can't get the bus to school? Some students face additional challenges there. Despite its small size, I agree that there are some serious equity challenges with closing it. It is in an EJ neighborhood. It is a significant feature and a significant amenity for the neighborhood, and it has value for the businesses that are nearby. And it's a hidden gem. And finally, I would just remind everyone that the voters here, if we're thinking about the overall cost, and if somebody talked about the cost per student, the voters here passed an override with a pretty high percentage. So I think this is a community that really supports our schools and wants to see schools remain open as much as possible. So please consider carefully, and I urge you to not close any schools unless it is absolutely necessary. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
Gregory Gore.
Hi, my name's Gregory Gore. I live at 136 Hayward Street in Braintree. I have 2 children that go to Ross. I have one child who has, or had, I should say, anxiety. He sat in the hallway at Ross because he was so anxious to get in there because he was overwhelmed. And the Ross school changed his life. My husband and I adopted 2 children. One is 7 and one is 8. And for you to tear that away from him, it's going to change his life. You cannot close the Ross School. You need to build up infrastructure. Look at Quincy. Quincy has so many things happening. Braintree has nothing. Bring the tax money to the schools. Bring the infrastructure to the schools. These children need to not be hurt because of a budget. It's wrong. It's so wrong to tear our kids apart. And that's the hard part about this, because my kids have cried over this decision. And I cry with them every single time they bring it up. It's horrible what this town is doing. We moved from Quincy, and now I'm like, should I have not moved from Quincy? Because of Braintree, we looked into it. We looked into so many towns, so many districts, and Quincy had an amazing school system for our children. It was diverse. It was LGBTQ friendly. And for you to tell my kids over a budgetary reason that they have to now figure out life at the age of 7 and 8. Stop. You ran on family values, and now you're breaking up families. Families of communities, families of every part of our children's lives. Stop breaking up families, because isn't that what you won for, Mayor Joyce? Family values? I just want to say, stop, figure it out. It's your job to figure it out.
That's the last name on the sign-up sheet. Is there anybody else in the room that did not sign up that wants to speak? I don't see any. Okay, so at this time, I will ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion by Dr. Horak.
Second.
Second by Ms. Tuffy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous. Again, I want to thank everybody who showed up tonight and who spoke on behalf of their communities, their schools, their children. We really do appreciate it. The school committee will be meeting every Monday in the month of March. This discussion will continue. We're expecting to take a vote by the end of the month of March. So again, please tune into our meetings, emails, whatever, any other way that you want to reach out to us, we'd appreciate it. But again, we do plan to vote by the end of this month. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion by Dr. Horak.
Second.
Second by Ms. Tuffy. Mr. Fogarty.
Aye.
Mr. Rollo.
Aye.
Mayor Joyce.
Aye.
Ms. Tuffy.
Aye.
Dr. Horak.
Aye.
Mr. Lynch.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. We are adjourned.